Good morning and welcome to the final installment of The Art of Leadership, The Art of Influence. I'm Beth Hawley with the Arizona Association of Realtors. Today's presentation will be about 35 to 45 minutes. We encourage you to be an active participant in these sessions. Feel free to ask questions during the webinar by writing them in the question box. If you'd like to speak, please dial into the phone call or have a computer mic connected. Click on the raise hand icon and we'll open your mic. If you're dialing in, make sure you select phone call in the control panel and input your audio pin when prompted. As always, today's webinar will be recorded and available next week on our website at aaronline.com. So welcome and let's get started.
Great, thank you, Beth. I appreciate that. Before I get started in, I'd like to do a quick sound for Eric. Eric, are you able to dial in this morning at all? Can you type or speak? Do we have you set up?
I'm showing him as in called in on his mic. So,
Eric, can you try to speak forward?
He's trying. Give him just
okay.
a second.
Want to try to get that working on it too, so because I'd like to kick off right after a quick review. All right, well, while we're working with that, what I'd like to do is kind of kick things off a little bit. We'll do a quick review. Hopefully we can get Eric's sound going so that he can share, as we concluded on Tuesday, the defining moments. And so would love to hear from Eric as he wants to share a defining moment that he had, so that we can again hear from Eric. So again, as we've talked about each time, I know that your time is valuable. We will definitely conclude and work on making sure that we close within the allotted time so that you can get back to your busy days. I know that today is the day, at least for my kids, it's the first day of school, and so I'm sure we're all excited and anxious, if you do have children, to have them come home and share how their day is. And so anyway, want to make sure that respectful of your time, but let's make sure that we try to focus in on being present. As I've shared before, it's really about there's a lot of the information, or a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are things that you've probably heard before again. And so instead of just in a cognitive way acknowledging and saying yes to it, but really again look at it from the lens and that perspective of how it's applying and how are you living it. Are you truly living through it, and how can you maybe improve or progress or grow in that particular area, or if there's any specific areas that we kind of talk through. So please be present. Make sure we're focused in on this. We'd love to get that interaction that's there. Wanted to share, and just I think we all can learn a lot from each other. So on Tuesday, our most recent session together and time and conversation, as we talked through the 6 ways of increasing your influence, we talked about defining moments. We talked about steps specifically to prepare for defining moments. That the first step being that you got to reflect. No better education comes from evaluated experience, not just experience, right? But instead evaluated experience, taking a step back and taking time to really look through maybe a specific moment or time and see, how did you perform? How did you react? What occurred during that situation? How could it have been better? What did you do well? What do you want to make sure that you continue down? And maybe some areas that you can continue to focus and grow within also. Second step of preparing for defining moments is to prepare, right? So get yourself active and look for it, right? Living through things. Making sure that you make, and what we talked about though is making those decisions, specifically ethical, but other type of decisions before you're faced with maybe the crisis moment or the big decision things that's there, but instead mentally going through a process of it, so that at that point all you're doing is executing what you had already committed to doing. So that's the second step in preparing for those defining moments that are going to occur throughout your life. The third step is to commit to make the most of defining moments, not shying away from defining moments, but instead really leaning into these particular times of your life, seeing how you're going to be able to grow from them, even if you feel a little caught off guard or maybe even nervous about it, but instead really focusing on and leaning into the opportunity for your own personal growth. And so I think it's important for us to take a look at that. I shared a few questions last week. One of them is asking for, when have you faced a make or break moment in your career as a defining moment that it has influenced your journey? And so with that, what I'd love to do is take some time before we dive into our last topic or last category. I'd like to see if Eric, are you available or are you able to speak through with your defining moment that you wanted to share?
We're actually still working on the glitch.
Okay. We're still working on the glitch. Okay. Well, how about if I start with this and you all can maybe type in and we'll work with this and hopefully we can get things ready to go for Eric that's there. But the second question that I asked though is, are you surrounding yourself with people who lean or who lift you? And I asked Danny, she actually had posted a comment on our Facebook page, just a thought that she had really been thinking and pouring into this particular question that was there in terms of how she applied into her life. And one of the questions and challenges that she had when she wrote that is that, again, her quote was that she had been struggling with this lean versus lift question. And that oftentimes what she found in leadership is that you really have to do both. And so I think what I hear from that, and unfortunately Danny's not able to make it today with us, but what I hear from the comment from Danny is sometimes I struggle between what's that balance between folks that I have in my life that are leaning on me versus those that are lifting. Maybe it has to do with, again, struggling, seasons in life, whether, again, how much should I allow for folks that are leaning upon me? So I'd like to pause here, and if you've got any thoughts or comments, though, I know Eric responded, but if there's anybody else also that maybe do you have that same type of struggle as you think about how many people and who you surround yourself that are leaning and lifting and how that plays out in your leadership? Is there any thoughts to add to that? Anybody else struggle with that particular area? I'll start by sharing, I shared a couple thoughts with Danny for everyone to see too. And I think, one of those thoughts is when you are evaluating people that you're allowing or kind of in your circle of leaning, I think that, obviously there has to be a balance of time and how much time you feed through. But I think the first thing that I shared though is making sure that you are with individuals that are committed to growth. I think we've all had experiences, or at least I've had experiences where I've had individuals that have maybe come to me and said, Dave, I need your help. I really want your help. And so I feel compelled to really step forward and work with them to help them maybe develop or pour into them. And yet what I would find is that every conversation was the same conversation. There never was any action or activity behind what we would talk about. Their problems were the same problems, just everything kind of circled and just kind of spun around, and there really was nothing that was being done. And what I found is that individual really wasn't committed to change. He really wasn't committed to wanting the assistance and the help. And so with that, I think that we have to look at those type of individuals that are in our life. Are they really just kind of leaning and kind of sucking that energy out? Or again, are they really individuals that are looking to grow, that we can really work together? And so I think that's one area. Beth, did I hear? Is there a comment or
we get Eric?
All right. Success.
Hey, Dave.
Eric.
Can you hear me, Dave?
I can.
Hello?
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to everybody. Hello to everybody on the webinar. I just wanted to take a minute or two real quick to answer that question that you spoke of in our last webinar on Tuesday about the defining moment. And Mine is has to do with really it has to do with the leadership part of myself when I was the president of the TAR last year. And when I became the president, I was looking forward to a very, very exciting year. And it was exciting, all right. I didn't realize that being the president meant that I also had to manage the CEO of our association. I don't think I was prepared for that. I thought more like as being the president, you would work together and accomplishing whatever the goals and tasks were for the year. And it didn't happen that way. And it kind of came up where I really had to go back to my days of being a manager, is what I do now, but having to step back and take on a different type of a leadership role when things weren't going the way I would want them to go pertaining to the CEO. Without getting into any kind of detail, it's more about the actions that I had to take, and when we talk about reaching out to those who are lifting you or those are leaning on you. And I felt that as a leader, I had to do some soul searching and realize that whatever decisions that I had to make concerning actions and issues in regards to what was going on at the CEO level at the association, I needed to think more outside of my box and think more about the membership. What was right for the membership? What was important to the membership and not to me or to a select few who weren't for me. I was very fortunate and blessed that I had a board that were very much my lifters. They supported me. They were the very people that I needed to speak with, the very people to tell me what I needed to hear. And so, the end result was making some decisions. I felt lonely at the top sometimes because I was going down a path that I know that it wasn't comfortable. But I remembered that I was a leader, and I knew that I needed to step up no matter what that situation was. I had to make some tough decisions. And, the end result was, the board made a decision to part ways with the CEO. And people, praised me, thanked me for my leadership, for my abilities. But I will tell you, it was not an easy road. It wasn't, we talk about leadership. We think leadership's easy. It's not. People from the outside look in, they see you, and they think that, wow, you make it easy. But it's not. There's nights when I couldn't sleep. I'm walking in the middle, I'm up talking to myself about how do I do this and what's going to be the result. Sometimes you feel like you don't have any friends. And I know at the end, I had all the friends that I needed. I had all the lifters that I needed. And more so, I had respect. And I had respect for those who also took part in making decisions that were easy as well too. So to everybody there, that's a defining moment for me. And when I really began to understand what leadership really truly is about, it's not always making the easy decisions. Sometimes about making the tough decisions and having to live with that and knowing that one, I did it for the membership and not for myself. And so that's what my defining moment was, Dave.
Wow, Eric, thank you so much for vulnerably, coming and presenting and opening that, again, that defining moment for you. There's so much within what you shared, and I'm sure the details within that, that again applies really within the entire series and going through it. Moments again, those probably some difficult conversations. Certainly as you shared, sometimes some sleepless nights as you're trying to evaluate, making sure that you're doing some soul searching, checking your heart, that you're focused in on the right thing, and that it's not about you, and that this isn't a situation that's somehow, changing there, and again, focused in on that mission at hand. And wow, there's just a lot there, Eric. And so thank you. It actually goes perfectly into our discussion today as we talk about the legacy mindset and having, again, more of that long-term viewpoint, which is absolutely what you found yourself encountering in the beginning, thinking that it was going to be easy road type deal. Man, we're all on the same page. This is going to be a ton of fun. And then to find out that there were some hard decisions and things that that you were going to need to lead through as you take that step back and look at the long-term view. So thank you, Eric. Great stuff. All right. Well, hey, let's talk about legacy. And so please, again, Eric, now that we've got your mic working, hopefully we'll hear your voice and you can share through as we talk through our session today about the legacy mindset. Again, I think that there's a lot of the story that you share that certainly falls into this too, as you're building and being intentional of what that long-term view is that's there. You know, as we again conclude with this, and we've moved through the 6 areas or 6 ways to increase your influence or leadership that we've talked about. I think it's fitting for us to come to this point of this legacy mindset, which is a very different mindset, as Eric shared in regards to how he approached and what he had to look at in facing things. I think that when we look at defining moments that we talked about on Tuesday, we can see how defining moments certainly feeds into our legacy, and that's where that connection comes. It's defining moments doesn't necessarily make our legacy, but they feed into, they're going to be a part of our legacy and the legacy mindset that we're looking at. I think when I think about legacy mindset, what I think and what comes to my mind, and whenever I talk with individuals or coach folks as we're beginning a relationship in the coaching area, I start by making a comment that says we need to begin with the end in mind. And I think that when I think about that particular comment and why I start with that is that we need to make sure that we take that step backwards and we're looking at things from a holistic perspective. We're not just task-oriented or focused on a specific thing, but instead we're looking at how everything is going to connect. And as leaders, that's really what our job is to see, right, where things are going to go, because most people aren't looking in that type of a mindset. So beginning with the end in mind. Now that may be a temporary assignment. It could be a board position that some of you may be a part of. It may be again a position from a charity organization, from board of realtors, whether it be state level or local level. It may be a variety of things, and there may be, as you're coming into it, maybe even a specific project that you're going to embark or take on. However, any which way, whether it be a temporary or whether we're actually talking about that dash on our tombstone when we come, when the day that we're born and the day that we pass, what that dash really means. I think that how we approach all of that is, again, focused in on, and where I believe you increase your influence by focusing on that long-term view, that legacy mindset that's there. You see, again, I think it is important for us to look at how we're moving through, and legacy specifically comes down to succession. How are we going to leave what we've got going on, the project, the organization, whatever it may be? How are we going to leave it after we're no longer here? And that's what it's all about in terms of carrying and bringing forth the legacy mindset that's there. So we look at the legacy mindset that's there. And I apologize, let me go back to this particular slide. I shared on Facebook an article by Simon Sinek. And you know, it was an interesting article, and I know that as I shared on Facebook, it really wasn't focused on legacy aspects. It really was focused in on organizations that's there. But I think that as I read through that article, and maybe it was because obviously in preparation and kind of rereading over our conversation today was right on my mind, but I thought about how we approach life and how many times we get stuck into just really doing a great job. We get all these trainings to feed our skills, to build our skills. We get to that top of the game situation where we really feel that we're bringing value to the organization, to what we're doing, and we feel fulfilled within that, and yet we stop there. And we don't take that long-term mindset that says, hey, can I share what I've learned? How can I empower others? How can I influence others to then grow also? And I think, again, when I read through that organization, I think of it as a challenge to making sure that, again, I look at that long-term viewpoint. again, I think that it struggles sometimes is you all are in producing leadership type roles where you're balancing both having to do and having to lead, whether it be a producing manager or whatever it may be in your life. I think there's many times that we struggle because we kind of straddle both of those. And I think that's where that conscious effort of making sure that we keep a legacy mindset is critical to keep that, again, that long-term view of what is it that that I'm going to leave? How am I going to leave things? And again, that legacy part is that transmitting over, right? That handing off that's there. As we look at a legacy mindset, it really starts with, and so we're going to build upon a legacy mindset from here, and it really starts with the power of multiplication, right? So as I look at the long-term view or the long-term view situation of what I'm looking to build within my organization, my team, whether it be for whatever that I'm looking at, project, I got to look at the multiplication, right? The focus within that. So the first part of looking at the power of multiplication is reproducing leaders and how it raises your influence. You see, if I actually reproduce leaders, not just followers, but reproduce leaders in the project that I'm in, the organization that I am, it actually increases. And we talked about that power of empowerment earlier in our time together, and how sometimes there's a paradox where we feel like giving to others takes away. There's this, again, this feeling that I need to protect and hold on. But the same goes for, again, reproducing leaders within our team and within our organizations, and how it actually increases our influence, because it again, it multiplies and grows, and it takes it to that next and new level that's there. You know, reproducing leaders, though, raises the new leaders' personal potential. You're helping lift their lid in their own leadership and personal development. So you're growing them. That's why it's important, again, for this multiplication mindset and how it fits within a legacy, the legacy aspect that we're looking to do. Reproducing leaders multiplies resources. If I have the ability to, again, reproduce a leader in my organization or the project that I'm doing, what that does is I now can entrust and I can truly hand off that task or whatever needs to be done, so that I can dedicate and commit my time to more or different things that's going to lift the overall mission of what we're trying to accomplish. So again, by reproducing additional leaders within things, it actually increases our resources to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. And our fourth bullet in why it's important from a multiplication standpoint is that reproducing leaders ensures a positive future for your organization. And as we talked about what legacy really is, legacy again is that succession, that as leaders, we're going to be looked at in that succession aspect. How did we leave it, and where is the organization or project or whatever it may be, where is it after we're gone? So I came across this interesting statistic that I really thought spoke to me in regards to how you have, or how we look at legacy mindset, certainly empowerment, and again that reproduction or growth. Interesting to see that 85% of leaders attract followers. You know, when I think about that, and that obviously being a dominating number that's there, I wonder, why is it that most leaders, almost, 8.5 out of 10, get stuck with at that point in their leadership that they attract followers? Can I ask, why do you think that most leaders get stuck at this point of attracting followers? Any thoughts? I think one of the areas that we get stuck within that is, candidly, I think attracting followers makes us feel better. I think that when I can look around and I can see individuals following me, it kind of makes me excited or really kind of feeds my own personal ego. And so I stop and I think about, oh man, look at these people, they're charging together with me and I've got them all there. And I think about that, and I think that that a lot of leaders probably stop there because unfortunately, you know, with that feeding of the ego, it really becomes about them.
So putting themselves first.
What was that, Beth?
Putting themselves first.
Yes, absolutely. Where that focus is that they're most important. That's great. 10% of leaders attract other leaders, right? So you look at that, and just by attracting other leaders to your organization, to your mission, to whatever you're trying to do, you're already in that top 10% that's there. Yet it goes on beyond that, and that next 5%, which is really what we're talking about, of that longer term view, that reproduction of leaders and that legacy mindset that only 5% of leaders reproduce leaders, right? So they actually create, help grow, mentor, and actually reproduce leaders within their organization. So you can see a differentiating aspect that if you can move yourself to that top 5%, right, what you're doing, what is that impact that you're making that's there? And again, asking yourself, where do you find yourself on this particular category? Do you feel like you're in the 85%, the 10, the 5? There may be times in specific areas of your life that you feel like you're in the 85, but 5% in another area and 10 in another. But I think, again, it's a challenging question, though, for you to ask yourself, where are you? Where do you find within, maybe it's a specific task or a specific project that's there, or you as a whole? Again, it's just keeping that focus and being conscious of where do I fall within so that I can grow myself. As we look at the differences between maintenance and multiplication, I think it's important to just kind of recognize, again, as leaders, where do I find myself within this? I thought it was interesting as I looked at kind of the 5 categories or 5 areas that are the gap between being in maintenance mode and in multiplication mode. And how that applies and how I've seen it in organizations, whether I was visiting an organization, whether I worked at an organization, could be a group, etc. But I've seen each of these 5 play out in it, and it was easily for me to visualize. The first one is the scramble, and 20% of leaders are actually actively in what I would call the scramble, the bottom of this particular area in that maintenance mode. The scramble is basically exactly what it says. You're scrambling around to try to fill all of the vacancies as your attrition rates of team members are just flying out the door. And we've all probably seen organizations, we may have even been a part of organizations that were in the scramble. People couldn't leave fast enough, and you couldn't get people in fast enough. And so they find themselves in this just desperation mode of the scramble that's there. The next, and as you can see from a percentage basis though, as leaders though, it's the survival mode. And certainly as half of leaders find themselves in this survival mode, which obviously between the two of it, 70%, that's where that 85 can feed within it too. So, but survival mode basically is that you do nothing to develop the people in the organization. You've done nothing to help them or grow them in there, yet you've found and you've been able to do something to maintain your team. You're not having turnover. It's not, you know, again, kind of the back door's not open where people are flooding through. Sometimes we find ourselves in survival mode because we got lucky. Maybe it's a specific market segment that people have to stay where they're at, and so they don't have any other choice. It may be that you have to pay and overpay people to stay in the organization. For a variety of reasons, again, 50% of leaders find themselves in that survival mode, trying to protect or hold on to what they've got. And they're focused in on just, again, that survival mentality. You know, when we look at the survival mode, this is your average, right? These are people that are just kind of clicking around, doing the bare minimum and just being average. That's there. The third area between the gap, though, is the siphon. This is where you've actually put together a development plan, and maybe you are pouring in and developing those leaders and potential leaders that are within your organization. However, they don't have a clear vision of where you're going, and they don't see how and what the connection is of what is possible for things. So what happens in the siphon area as a leader, though, is you've got other organizations that are siphoning out those high potential leaders from you, those high potential team members that are on your team. This also comes from, again, you're developing these particular people or that team, the team that's there, but you're not connecting with your team or with those high potential leaders. There's a big difference between developing them and connecting with them. Connecting with their dreams, their aspirations, knowing what they really want so that, again, you can help them get to that particular level or position, et cetera, that's there. So really the key to getting out of the siphon mode is, again, connectivity, which brings to the fourth level, and that's the 19%, which is synergy. And this, I will tell you that most of the time, we look at the leaders that are in the synergy level and we look at them as being the best of the best. They're not only developing their team, they're building connection with their team, they're helping them achieve great results, they're helping them, again, reach levels and get fulfillment in their own parts. And so, again, it's a very rewarding, and we look at synergy as being that top area. But I would challenge those that maybe, and there may be areas that you're in that particular synergy level, though, that there is a fifth level and a fifth point within that, and that is the significance. You know, the difference between the number 4 and number 5, between synergy and significance, comes down to one thing. Synergy is about them achieving great things and moving forward, empowering and developing them with you. Significance is about them putting them in a position to continue that success, to continue on down this pathway without you. That's the big difference. And so, again, as we look at this long-term goal, and as leaders, putting ourselves in that top 1% where we're not only just developing and connecting with individuals, but instead we're putting them in a position to be successful without us. You know, I love when I think about these particular 5 things, one of the things that I look at as an organization is, are you playing defense or are you playing offense? And I think, as you can see, though, when you're looking at the top 3 as a scrambler, survival, and even as a siphon, you're playing defense in the game of business. You're trying to protect what you have. You're trying to maintain or try to hold on to things. Siphoning, you may be pulling in a couple more offensive strategies, but again, you're dominated by your defense that's there. When you look at number 4, that synergy level and significance, that's when you're offensive. That's when you're going after it. You're on the balls of your feet, driving forward with what you can accomplish and the passions and the mission that is before you. And I think, again, as leaders, if we can look at, where am I at? Am I at the siphon area? Am I always worried and looking behind my back to see whether somebody's going to pilfer or take a great team member from me? Or am I in a synergy where we're humming like crazy? Am I at a point where I'm just trying to fill the need because I've got attrition going on? I think, again, we flow through these particular 5 areas between maintenance and multiplication a lot. It's not something we achieve and we're done with, but instead it is something that we continue to flow back and forth. And so I, again, encourage you to look at that, find out what type of environment am I fostering as a leader within these particular areas. Reproducing others or other influencers. I've got 4 things, again, to look at as we look at reproducing other influencers in our life. Number 1, as we've talked about and has been a continual theme throughout our entire time together, is you got to develop your own leadership potential. People want to look up to and follow and also be a part of those A players, those leaders, those high potentials want to be with other A players, others that are working on themselves and growing. And so you need to have and develop a personal growth plan that's there. Number 2, obviously, find and attract people with leadership potential. Sometimes it may be early on in their career or other stages of their career. Sometimes you may be the one that's siphoning those potential leaders. But again, as you're looking to reproduce within your organization or your mission or your team, that's the next part, is attracting that top talent. Number 3 is to teach the person to be a leader. Sometimes you're able to pull in a high potential leader that's already got leadership skills and talents that are there. But this really speaks to, again, getting them to a point where you're helping them grow as a leader, not just having them perform a task. And we talked about the differences between that in our time together about empowerment. And then number 4 is the multiplying, where we're replicating this over and over and over. We're looking again to reproduce and grow. And this really comes, and multiplication really comes from mentorship. It's really giving of yourself to them, which is that 3 and 4 combo, is that you're opening yourself up and you're giving it. As we transition into the legacy mindset, I want to get more time and speak into kind of that what legacy aspect it is. So I think that, again, that reproduction, you've got to get your organization set up, create that environment that you're attracting top talent, that you're developing top talent, that you're connecting with top talent, but then also now moving into the step again of having that legacy mindset. As I mentioned earlier, the leader's lasting value is measured by succession. How do you leave the organization, the project, etc., from the point that you started to when it's time for you to maybe move on to something else that's there? That's the key. Everything you think and do is taking you somewhere. It's taking that mindset and understanding that everyone is going to leave a legacy, right? Everyone is. You're going to leave a legacy, period. Whether you practice or open yourself up to these type of principles or thought processes that are there, you're going to leave a legacy. You can leave a positive one, you can leave a negative one, you can leave one on accident, or you can be intentional. And that's the key when we're talking about looking at the long-term mindset, the long-term view of things. When we look at living a legacy mindset, I look at, and what I want to bring up is 4 disciplines to help develop your leadership legacy, right? So it's looking at, again, how can I develop this? How can I create, again, this sense or these thoughts in my mind that I can continuously look at, that I'm looking at this long-term goal that's there. So number 1, it's actually taking a step back and taking some time to yourself and to really think about and understand and know what is the legacy that I want to be known for. Again, as I mentioned earlier, though, you can give a positive, a negative, or an accidental legacy. Instead, it's taking this mindset, and the first part of it is to be intentional. What is it? If I'm now going to serve in the capacity of being the president of a board, how is it? What do I want it to look like? Going back to that original point earlier, start with the end in mind. After my time, after my tenure is done, whether it be 6 months, 12 months, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it may be, and I think that you've got that sizing throughout your entire career, or in different areas that you're a part of. But what do I want it to be? What do I want my legacy to be? And really pulling myself into that theme and leaning into knowing what I want that to look like. I think that, again, as I think about being intentional, most people simply accept their lives. They accept the actions that happen or the environment or whatever is going on. They just accept it. Very few people actually step forward and actually lead their life. And that's what it's about in terms of knowing what legacy and what I want my legacy to look like. The second point here is, again, living the legacy that you want. This goes back to our session, one of our sessions earlier about integrity and living not a duplicitous life, but instead being consistent in all areas, that I live out the legacy that I want. I've heard John Maxwell brings up that there's 7 major areas of influence in society. And so as we look at what are the major influencers or the major impact areas of our society, it's made up of number 1, religion, number 2, economics and business, number 3, government, number 4, family, number 5, media, number 6, education, and the 7th one is sports. Think about those 7 spheres, those 7 areas, streams of influence that we have in our society. Where are you playing at? Where are you intentionally building your legacy in? Is it with your family? Is it your business? Are you doing really well in one, not so much in another? Is there an opportunity for you to be able to lean in to maybe a couple more that's there? Again, being intentional and living consistently through, right? Leaving a legacy that's worth sharing that's there. I love the quote, and I think I shared with this same quote before, and that's the Gandhi quote, is to be the change that you want to see, right? Or in other words, though, that you must become what you desire to see in others. So if you're trying to lead the organization through a difficult time, make sure that you're living in a manner that's consistent with where you want them to head. You cannot fall prey into what maybe the challenges or difficulties that are going on, but instead, I need to focus on modeling the behavior and living a life that's consistent on where I'm headed and what I want the entire mission or organization or team to go towards. The third is to choose who will carry on your legacy to pass the baton. I think that's actually broken into 2 areas, though. Number 1, I think you need to choose, right? Part of being intentional is not leaving it to chance, not just going, well, I hope that when my time is over, that there'll be somebody that will be ready to rise up and take my place. Instead, part of the legacy mindset is identifying, to having folks come alongside. I think about how each one of you have chosen to serve your communities, to serve your fellow realtors in your respective markets, or even at a state level that's there. My question to you is, have you chosen your successor or your successor's successor? Are you identifying individuals around you to help them come along so that it can continue that change or continue what you're looking to, the mission that you're looking to accomplish going forward? The second part of this bullet, though, is to pass the baton. I don't know about you, but I love the Summer Olympics and specifically watching some of the track and fields and the relay race and how it works. You know, oftentimes the fastest runners in the world do not win the relay race. It's all about the handoff. It's all about, again, that movement or that, again, that area of handing the baton off. And this, I think, is an area that as leaders, as leaders and we're looking at succession, whether it be a temporary post or not, I believe that number 3 is an area that as leaders, we really fall down on, that as leaders, we're really not looking ahead enough on it. And so we look back to pass the baton and there's nobody there. Or we fumble the handoff. We never truly pass off the baton. We never truly help out and work within that. And so I challenge you that as you look at this area of building out a legacy, as you're looking at who you're going to pass on the baton of whatever role that you're in at this point, making sure that you think through and that you're intentional of how this particular trade-off or this particular handoff is going to go. I think about, again, from the Olympic standpoint, how many times have the USA had the fastest runners around the track and yet they fumbled the handoff? Don't be that leader in the succession area. Again, goes along with that is you got to make sure that you make the pass, right? You got to hand it off. So you got to make sure there. And as I shared already, though, about that relay race and about, again, making the handoff that's there, we need to make sure that we're focused in on that particular handoff and making it a clean pass, right? It's that exchange zone that we need to make sure that we're looking at. So as I think back, again, carrying that legacy mindset, and how, again, as we reproduce leaders, as we grow our organizations, how that actually increases our influence. It increases our, again, what we're looking to accomplish as we've looked at these 6 ways to increase your influence. This really is that lifting aspect of the 6 ways. This is what gives the long-standing influence far beyond you even being a part of the group or project or team or organization directly. Legacy really is about that long-term area that's there. I'm going to pause here and see if there's any thoughts or comments that you'd like to share about that legacy mindset. Is there anything that maybe you've struggled with before, or that you had an aha moment, or that has kind of fed into the realization of again, maintaining a legacy mindset? Any thoughts? All right. Well, that's okay. If you'd like to write in, I certainly would encourage, please, put your thoughts out or in our Facebook page and post there. Let others be able to kind of feed in and grow and learn from your experiences. But please, again, keeping out, and it's really about leading today with tomorrow in mind, looking forward and making sure that you actually are aimed at something. Because again, you never hit, you can never hit the bullseye if you don't have a bullseye to aim at. So focusing in on that long-term view that's there. I'm going to leave you with the last thought, though, again, is that when we look at leadership and we look at influence, that everything rises and falls on leadership. And I think that any of us that have been in those leadership roles in an organization, and certainly within our own personal lives and the people around us, I think we can look at that particular quote and know the truth that is spoken here. How we conduct ourselves, living in a manner worthy of your calling as a leader, looking to influence others, everything rises and falls on that leadership. Living a life of integrity, living, again, looking to value and having a heart of truly valuing others and not making it about myself. Again, understanding that it's a process and being committed to the process as I grow throughout it. Focused on not just delegating tasks, but instead looking to truly empower others. Making sure that I'm prepared for the defining moments that are going to come in our life that's there. And as Eric shared earlier, sometimes you don't even, or most of the time, you don't know when you're going to be faced with those type of defining moments, whether it be a specific moment or even a season of your career or season of time. And lastly, starting with the end in mind. I'd like to ask you all that we will be sending out, and so it'll be coming out from Beth and AAR. We're going to send out a survey over the next week or within the next few days or so that's there. I would love to get your feedback on the survey. I'd love to hear, your ideas and thoughts in regards to this webinar. It's our first time doing it, how the content was, if there's any ideas on how we can improve it so that others can learn more or grow within it. But I'd love to, again, hear your feedback on what we can do to improve and ultimately provide value to you and your peers here, a part of the Arizona Association. So thank you for your time. Don't ever hesitate. Please reach out to me. You guys have my contact information, and if there's anything I can do for you, let me know. So thank you all. Have a fantastic rest of the day. Bye-bye.